Forgave my wife for cheating in college, built a successful business, provided a lavish lifestyle, but she left me for a wealthy man when my business struggled. So, I've been married to my wonderful wife, Josephine, for the past 23 years. We first crossed paths back in our college days. Funny enough, she was actually my buddy's sister, and we used to hang out in the same circles quite a bit. At the start, there wasn't any spark or attraction between us, just two people getting to know each other as friends. But as time went on, we started to see each other in a different light and slowly fell in love. Josephine was always the life of the party, super outgoing and extroverted, traits that I found really captivating and still love about her to this day. By the time we were gearing up to graduate from college, our relationship had gotten pretty serious. I figured the next logical step for us was to move in together and eventually tie the knot. But Josephine had different plans. She told me she wanted to take a year off to travel around the world. She'd always dreamed about exploring new places, and even had a vision board with all the destinations she wanted to visit pinned up in her room. So it wasn't a huge shock when she mentioned it. I had secured a solid job by then and wasn't too keen on giving it up to roam around. After some heart-to-heart discussions, we decided she'd go it alone if that's what she really wanted. So, while I was sorting out a small but cozy apartment for myself, Josephine was busy prepping for her world tour. She wasn't from a wealthy family, so all her travel expenses had to come from her savings, which she'd built up over years working part-time as a cashier at a restaurant. She also had student loans like me, but she was determined to make her dream a reality with whatever money she'd saved up. When the day finally came for her to leave, it was a mix of sweet and sour emotions seeing her off at the airport. Josephine promised to text me once she landed at her first destination. At the start, everything seemed to be going great. She would message me every day, sharing stories about the amazing places she was visiting and the delicious food she was trying. From her pictures, she looked over the moon, and I was genuinely thrilled for her. On my end, I'd fill her in about my day at the office and the projects I was working on. I know it sounds boring to some, but I really enjoyed my 9-to-5 back then and couldn't imagine trading it for anything else. Josephine would listen to my stories and often tell me how I was missing out on life by being cooped up in an office while she was sipping coffee at some quaint cafe or lounging on a tropical beach. She'd talk about how society was too uptight and that people needed to travel more and just chill. But as days turned into weeks, Josephine's excitement started to fade. She ran into all sorts of problems while traveling. Her wallet got stolen at a hostel, her roommates were noisy and kept her up at night, and she was struggling with the intense heat during bus rides in some Asian countries. She began asking me to lend her money so she could grab a meal or book her next ticket. She tried to pick up odd jobs here and there, but without a proper work visa, it was tough. She made some new friends among fellow travelers, and at first, they seemed to be having a blast partying and exploring together. She'd send me photos of their adventures, but after a while, things soured. She started telling me about the drama within the group and how they'd get into arguments. During those tough moments, I'd tell her she could always come back home and live with me. I reminded her she had been on the road for months and deserved a break, but she never took me up on the offer. Oh, night. Out of the blue, she called me in tears, saying she missed home too much and wanted to come back. She didn't have any money left to book a flight, so I did it for her without a second thought. I was just over the moon that my girlfriend was finally coming back. When I went to pick her up from the airport, I was a bundle of nerves. Long-distance relationships are no walk in the park, but I was proud of how we had navigated that rocky terrain. Imagine my shock, though, when I saw her walk out of the arrival gate with a huge bruise on her face. She was wearing sunglasses, probably to hide it. She ran up to hug me, but I couldn't stop staring at the mark. When I gently asked her about it, she brushed off my question and started kissing me. She also looked like she had lost a fair bit of weight, which is kind of expected when you're constantly on the move. On the drive home, I asked her again about what had happened to her face. It was really worrying to think that someone might have hurt her. Josephine tried to dodge my questions, which only made me more anxious. I decided to give her some space, hoping she'd open up when she was ready. When we got to my place, she was pleasantly surprised at how well kept it was. She missed sleeping in a comfy bed and taking hot showers. I let her freshen up while I tackled her mountain of dirty laundry. Later, we sat down to have dinner. I'd made her favorite dish, chicken lasagna, and picked up her favorite drink from the store, knowing she'd appreciate the gesture. As she sat down to eat, she smiled and thanked me. I was super excited, talking about all the plans I had for us that weekend, taking her around the city and checking out some cool restaurants. Suddenly, I noticed she had stopped eating. Concerned, I asked if she was okay and saw tears rolling down her cheeks. I jumped out of my seat and rushed over to her, asking what was wrong. That's when Josephine broke down, hugging me tightly. I held her, feeling petrified about what would have happened. After a while, she started to open up, saying she'd seriously messed up. I listened quietly as she began telling me she never meant for it to happen, but it did. Confused, I asked her to explain. Turns out, Josephine had gotten close to a guy from her travel group. They hung out every day and she felt a connection with him. Wow, where do I even start with this one? So Josephine has always been this free-spirited, fun, and funny person. She didn't even realize when she started crushing on this guy, but once it hit her, she was totally wrecked with guilt. The thing is, the guy had a girlfriend, so Josephine knew better than to get involved. But then, there was that one crazy night she and the crew got super drunk, and somehow, she and the guy ended up in an alley. Long story short, he kissed her, and she didn't stop him because, well, she liked it. But then, drama alert, the guy's girlfriend found them, went ballistic, and even punched Josephine right in the face. Feeling super embarrassed and upset, Josephine decided to cut her trip short and come back to me. She looked like she was losing her mind as she spilled it all out, the guilt, the confusion, everything. She told me she felt horrible for cheating and knew she had to come clean. When she finally confessed, I was just shattered. I mean, the shock, the hurt, the betrayal, it was all too much. I couldn't believe the person I loved could do this to me. It felt surreal, like an out-of-body experience. I was so overwhelmed I had to run to the washroom to compose myself. Josephine was behind me, apologizing over and over, saying how much she wished she could undo it all. I couldn't handle being in the same room as her, so I just grabbed my coat and left, needing space to think. I was torn on one hand. She'd cheated on me and admitted she enjoyed it. On the other, we had a long history, and this was the first time she'd ever betrayed me. When she shared her travel plans with me before, I never doubted her because this was totally out of character for her. That night, when I got home, she was asleep on my bed, looking like she'd been crying all night. I didn't wake her up. I just spent the entire night tossing and turning, trying to figure out what to do. The next morning, I laid it out for her. We could either end things right there or try to work through it together, but she'd have to make a serious effort to rebuild my trust. I told her how disappointed I was, but also that I was willing to work on it if she was committed too. Josephine hugged me tight, tears streaming down her face, and thanked me for giving her another chance. She promised she'd never make the same mistake again, but I didn't stop there. I told her she needed to find a job and start paying me back, even just a little each month for all the expenses I covered during her trip. She was a bit surprised, but agreed. She knew she had betrayed my trust, and if we were going to fix things, it was only fair she paid me back. Over the next few months, we lived together while she hunted for a job. She ended up landing a gig as a personal assistant, which didn't pay much, but it was a start. I reminded her that without much work experience, she had to start small. She understood and agreed. Every time she got paid, she'd give me some money back and also worked on repaying her education loan. We split the rent based on our salaries, and I covered more of the expenses, which was fine as long as she was doing her part. Slowly, we began repairing our relationship. I started trusting her again, falling back in love with her smile and laughter. We met each other's families, and our bond grew stronger. Eventually, we talked about getting married. While Josephine wanted a traditional wedding, I suggested spending the money on an extravagant honeymoon instead. She loved the idea, especially since we had never traveled internationally together. After a small wedding ceremony, with close friends and family, we set off on an incredible adventure. Traveling with her was pure joy. We lounged on beaches, sipped mocktails, and every morning felt like a slice of paradise. It was a much-needed break for me since I rarely took time off work. We came back home feeling rejuvenated and more connected than ever. That trip made me realize the importance of chasing my dreams. I'd always wanted to start my own business, but was scared of failing. The freedom I felt while traveling pushed me to take the plunge. Josephine was a bit worried about losing my regular salary, but I assured her that once the business took off, it would be worth it. She agreed, and I handed in my resignation letter, ready to start this new chapter in our lives. Building the business was tough, but I eventually found success. We bought a beautiful beach house, and Josephine was able to leave her job because my business income was more than enough. We were also blessed with a baby boy named Sam. He is the best thing that ever happened to me was when Sam was born. I decided to take a break from work to stay at home and take care of him. Luckily, my business kept running smoothly with the help of my amazing staff, which gave me the freedom to spend quality time with our newborn son, Sam. He's always been my little buddy, and my wife even jokes that we're like two peas in a pod. We've shared countless hours playing, laughing, and learning together. Watching Sam grow into a kind and curious young boy has been the greatest joy of my life. Over the years, Sam has always shown interest in working with me someday. So, when he turned 16, he started interning at my company every summer. I made sure to teach him everything from the ground up because the plan was for him to eventually take over the business, allowing me to finally retire. Things were going pretty smoothly until last year when I accidentally found out my wife had been taking antidepressants. I discovered her pills hidden in a bathroom cabinet at a break, but she never took me up on the offer. One night, when I asked her about it, she got defensive and told me to mind my own business. I was genuinely concerned, so I reassured her that she could talk to me about anything. After a bit of back and forth, she finally admitted that she had been feeling bored and depressed in our marriage lately. This came as a surprise to me because we had regular date nights and took 3 vacations every year to places she chose. We lived in a spacious home with plenty of luxuries, and while I dedicated my time to work, she spent days playing tennis and hanging out with friends. I thought I had provided everything she could ever want. I asked if something specific was bothering her, but she said no and admitted that she was secretly attending therapy sessions. I hugged her and told her there's no shame in seeking help, and she could always talk to me freely. That's when she mentioned that her therapist suggested adding some excitement to our lives by considering an open relationship. I was shocked and didn't see that coming. I asked how having an open relationship would solve our issues. She explained she felt stuck and wanted some excitement. I was baffled and realized that she often entertained impractical ideas and got bored easily. I could hardly believe her therapist would suggest something like that without fully understanding our relationship dynamic. I made it clear that I couldn't agree to an open relationship. I told her that if she truly wanted that, we'd have to get a divorce because I couldn't stay married to someone wanting to date others. She looked offended and upset and quickly insisted it was just a suggestion and we didn't need to talk about divorce. I told her I had fulfilled all my promises, and if she kept asking for more, there wasn't much left I could give. She nodded in understanding, and that was the last time we talked about it. We continued our date nights, and she never mentioned the open relationship again. She kept taking her antidepressants, and I was always there to support her. I hoped she would find contentment and happiness over time. Unfortunately, this year brought more challenges. After COVID, we faced a significant loss of customers, and our business had slowed down over the past 2 years. Then we had to close our second largest branch, which was a big financial hit. I've always been open with my family about business matters, so when I told them about the closure, they were understandably upset. While my son asked about our plan moving forward, my wife got anxious about further financial losses. I assured her that setbacks were part of running a business, and we had enough savings to cover our losses. She argued that we needed to cut our losses and sell the business, something she'd mentioned whenever we faced tough times. I understood her worry, but as any business person knows, you have to deal with challenges to see better days. I believed we could recover with time and didn't want to give up easily. I tried talking to her about it, but she got mad, accusing me of not considering her feelings. She said she was tired of hearing me claim I could handle everything. She even suggested I should have stuck to a 9-to-5 job, implying I wasn't cut out to be a businessman. Her words hurt a lot, considering everything I've done for our family with the money I earned from my business. Our argument escalated, and she declared she was done being married to a loser like me. She called me hurtful names before packing some things and saying she was leaving. I was shocked and couldn't understand why a discussion about my business had blown up like this. My son tried to calm her down, but she put him in a tough spot by asking if he wanted to go with her or stay with me. He started to cry, clearly torn. I tried to reason with her and understand her behavior, but in the end, he chose to stay with me. When my wife drove away that day, I couldn't help but think back on how utterly confusing those times were for us. We were completely baffled by Josephine's decision to leave, unable to wrap our heads around why or how it all happened. My wife had always been my best friend, and I just couldn't figure out what went wrong. My son, Sam, kept telling me it might just be a phase, and maybe she'd come back. But as the days went by, Josephine ignored our calls and cut off all communication. I couldn't sit around feeling sorry for myself, so I threw myself back into work, hoping that fixing my struggling business might somehow also fix my relationship. Then, out of the blue, after a month of silence, Josephine asked Sam and me to meet her for dinner. Deep down, I kind of knew where this was heading, but it still hurt to face it. I agreed to meet, despite the dread. Over dinner, she laid it all out. She was unhappy in our marriage and had decided she wanted a divorce. Sam looked shocked, but I had a feeling this was coming, so I just stayed silent, trying to take it all in. Josephine continued, saying she was moving out and taking her things, and when I asked if she found a new place, she smiled and dropped the bomb. She was moving in with her new boyfriend. I was stunned, hurt, and confused all at once. Josephine explained that she had fallen for an older man during the past month and didn't want to waste any more time being unhappy. She assured me that she didn't want any alimony because she knew my business was in trouble. She just wanted a quick and peaceful divorce so she could move on with her life. Despite my own heartbreak, I agreed. Sam, on the other hand, was furious. He yelled at her for abandoning us, but she defended herself, saying she had done her best and couldn't force herself to stay. She even offered Sam the chance to live with her and her boyfriend, but he refused, telling her he wasn't going to abandon the family like she did. Proudly, he squeezed my hand and told her he'd choose me over her any day. We left quickly after that, and since then, Sam has been unusually quiet. I even caught him crying once, which just breaks my heart. I haven't even fully processed my own feelings yet. Originally, I was filled with anger and wanted to fight my wife for putting our son through this. But after posting on Reddit and reading all the supportive comments, I calmed down. You all were right. If she doesn't want alimony and just wants to leave, I should let her go. It's like the trash taking itself out. I convinced Sam to start therapy, hoping he can heal from this sadness. Fast forward 5 months and I finally have some good news. Josephine and I finalized our divorce, and true to her word, she didn't take a penny from me. My lawyer had warned me to be prepared to fight if she changed her mind, but thankfully it didn't come to that. Apparently, her new boyfriend, who turns out to be a married older Saudi man, didn't want her living off my money. She's trying to convince him to marry her and didn't want to seem like a gold digger. Whatever her reasons, I'm just glad to be done with her. During our court meetings, Josephine tried to catch my eye and apologize, but I ignored her every time. Sam has completely cut her out of his life and continues therapy, learning to cope with the divorce. My business is slowly improving, and I'm optimistic about getting it back on track without Josephine dragging me down. I can now fully focus on taking my company to new heights. Today, though, I found out that Sam visited his mom. What really shocked me was that he had gone to her place to meet her boyfriend and spilled all the beans. Josephine called me in tears, accusing me of orchestrating the whole thing. I had no idea what she was talking about. When Sam got home, he explained that he wanted closure and to teach his mom a lesson. He pretended to want to meet her, which made her happy because she thought he had forgiven her. But during lunch, he told her boyfriend everything about how she abandoned us and cheated on me. Even though the boyfriend probably already knew, it must have been intense hearing it from Sam. I guess he needed to express his feelings somehow. So, once before we got married, my ex and I had talked about something during one of his therapy sessions, and he ended up telling his new boyfriend about it too. He claimed that my ex would probably cheat on him as well. I can totally imagine how upset Josephine must be about this, especially since she's likely trying to lock down her future with this wealthy guy. When I asked my son if he felt any relief after confronting his mother, he nodded and said he had always wanted to share these things with her but never had the chance before. He felt like he couldn't really express himself properly until now. Because of that, I decided not to punish my son. Instead, I sent a message to Josephine, assuring her that while I'd make sure my son wouldn't contact her again, I didn't think he did anything wrong. I told her that I didn't know he would do this, but I was proud of him for speaking his truth and letting out his frustrations. If her partner's view of her changed after hearing what my son had to say, it just goes to show how poorly she treated us in the past. Josephine hasn't replied to me yet, but honestly, I don't think she has much of a leg to stand on. For now, I'm just going to focus on making sure Sam is doing okay.